Let's begin with a word of prayer together. Gracious God, may the words of my mouth, the meditations of all our hearts, be acceptable to you, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, Chuck and some of our high school youth are at Tall Oaks. I got my experience of Tall Oaks when I first moved to town. I didn't have a place to live, and so Tall Oaks campsite was my home for almost 2 months. So I got a feel for what this place is that many of our youth and counselors love at Tall Oaks. It made me think of a memory of, I've been to many, many camps throughout my lifetime. Dozens and dozens of camps over my lifetime. As a camper, as a counselor, as a keynoter, as a director, done all those roles at camp. And I remember at a camp for 4th and 5th graders, and when it came time in the schedule for meals, when the bell would ring, and there was like this mad dash to the dining hall, because you wanted to be as close to the front of the line as possible. I'm not sure why, because they had enough food for everybody, but you rushed to the front because you wanted to be first. I'll never forget one of the directors. I was always mad at this director. We got in line. He goes, "We're going to do something a little different today. We're going to do kind of a start. Those at the front of the line are going to eat last, and those at the end of the line will get to eat first." And we did this whole walk around line and reversed our line. I was so mad. I mean, I got to the first. I should be able to eat first, right? And that director kind of had us think a little differently about who gets food and who doesn't get food and how quickly we get food. And I still think about that. I meant that was like in the 1980s. I'm still thinking about, I didn't get to eat first that line at junior camp. When I look at Mark 10, this text that Maureen wonderfully shared with us in a biblical storyteller way, a text that Pam shared with the kids in a very meaningful way, there is a lot in this section of chapter 10 from verses 17 to 31. There's a lot to absorb within this story. Several weeks ago, we had Youth Sunday last week. Denise was preaching in my absence the week before, but go back all the way to May 30th. I preached an early passage from Mark 10 that invited us to consider the children. If we don't welcome children, we will not have a place in God's beloved community. That children are the model by which we understand how to live out this beloved community on earth. And Jesus began to kind of rearrange the understanding of who's in and who's out, and who's included, who's important, who's not important, basically saying we're all important. And the vehicle by which we understand the world is through the eyes and experience of children. That was the first part of chapter 10. And that was kind of hard enough to kind of process that, where we continue in chapter 10 and we get this section of chapter 10. This young, rich ruler comes seeking the questions that we all seek, the grand questions of what's it like after this life? How do I get there? What do I need to do? What is my role in fulfilling my future with a sense of safety and security? And Jesus responds, well, you shouldn't murder, you shouldn't commit adultery, you need to honor your father and mother, you need to do all these things. A rehearsal of what we typically know as many of the 10 Commandments. Jesus recites those. And I'm sure the rich ruler at this point is thinking, check, 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 kind of going through the list. I'm doing pretty good here. Gets to the end of Jesus' list, says, I've done them all. I do all those things all the time. From when I was a little kid, I did all these things. I guess I'm good, right? And then Jesus says, well, there's something else. You seem to have accumulated a lot of stuff in your life. And most of us are kind of guilty of accumulating a lot of stuff in our life, saying, let go of those things, and then let's visit again. He kind of walks off disappointed, frustrated, wondering, thinking, I was doing so well until right up at the very end. And then Jesus turns to the disciples and has a conversation with the disciples. And that's an interesting conversation. Usually the disciples are going, where to go, Jesus? Except that message hits them too. It's not just the rich young ruler that needs some adjustment in his life. He looks at the disciples and says, we might consider your life too. where you are and what you're doing. I mean, get down to the place where Peter even says, we gave up everything to be with you. What do you mean we may not have what we think we have coming to us? Through most of this narrative of Mark, and even in the narrative of first century world, there was kind of a pecking order. And most of the pecking order was established either by wealth or status. And your goal was to kind of make your way up the ladder of significance, the ladder of having stuff and having a role that others saw that was important. It was really kind of a method of accomplishment, what I would dare say success. If we have all the markers of success, we should be happy, right? Look at this person. Look at the cars they drive. They got another home. They have a boat. They've got all these things. I mean, that's the life I want, right? They have all these things, right? And they have wealth. They have money to do these things. They have positions that allow them to do this stuff. They have the status. They have the wealth. Surely that's what I want for my life. Pheam Perkins, who's a New Testament scholar, says about this text in chapter 10 that we have to redefine what we think about in our relationship with God. Our life is not figured out by success. Our life is shaped by faithfulness, Pheam Perkins says. In some ways, some people might think faithfulness and success are synonymous with one another. And then Jesus would say, you probably need to reevaluate your definitions of success and faithfulness. The disciples have to think about it. We have to think about it. What does it mean to be faithful? I think one of the things that helps us get there is tapping into the passions of our life. At least myself included, many times taught as a kid, you kind of wanted to get ahead in life. You know that phrase, let's get ahead. In my mind, I'm thinking, well, what does it mean to get ahead? Well, I've got this position, and I'm going to move to this position. And if you even think about it in kind of a metaphor of a company, you start in at the ground floor. We're going to get you in at the ground floor. What does that say? You have to work your way up into the system to get raises, to get position changes, to get places that your life seems to matter to you. What we have in this world that Jesus is talking to the rich young ruler about, he's talking to the disciples about, is a merit-based system. If we look at our world today, a merit-based system seems to benefit those that have the right skin color, or they have the right economic status, or they have the right understandings of who they are compared to other people. A merit system divides people. That's what merit systems do. It seems to reward some and not reward others. There's only so much merit to go around. And so if you gain merit, then someone else is not getting merit. And Jesus is trying to just kind of reshape the thinking of the disciples in this world of wealth and status, and to reimagine what a world would be in terms of faithfulness. Now, I heard a song on America's Got Talent the previous week. You may have heard it too. Song by Nightbird. I don't know if you've ever seen the video, seen the song. Powerful song. Nightbird, she got the golden buzzer. I mean, I got to see it live. It was a very moving song as this woman has battled cancer and still has cancer in her lungs and liver and spine. And she sang the song, It's Okay. She was interviewed later by a person that produces music, one of the YouTube videos I watched about Nightbird. I was kind of curious about her story. And one of the things that was interesting about her response was, he goes, the guy that was interviewing her said, it's interesting how this song just kind of took off. and has meant so much to so many people. And she goes, that's the interesting thing about songwriting. When I was writing the song and I first sang the song, it was for me. But then when I performed it live, the thing with music is that people are going to listen to the song in the way they want to listen to the song. And I realized as soon as I sang the song publicly, it was no longer my song. It was their song in the way it best made sense to them. It started out as kind of this selfish, I need to do this for me. And in an interview, she realized the song, yeah, it's for me, but it's for others. It was a song that was a song of generosity for others to feel and to experience what they needed at that moment of their life. I remember when she walked off the stage after she sang the song, the gentleman says, when you sang that song, it was so amazing. Those are the words we needed to hear at this time in our lives during this year of pandemic. We needed to hear this. And I began to sense in that experience, and I'm just using that as one experience of what it means to live beyond a merit system, to live in a faithfulness system, a relational system, where our lives benefit one another simultaneously all the time. You know, one of the complaints that most churches get through the decades is you're always asking for money all the time. Every time we come to the doors, we've got an offering. We got a special offering. There's all these things. In a merit-based system, it would look like we're asking for money all the time to do certain things. But in a relational, faithful system, we are living in a world that is not about wealth and status. It is about creating opportunities for everyone to thrive and flourish in the world. So every time there is an opportunity to give, it's an opportunity to change the narrative of the world in which we live. You walk out into the hearth room today, and there are coats hanging on an easel. There are kids in Olathe that don't have coats when it's cold. I mean, how silly is that? That shouldn't happen in our world, except we have to have an opportunity to buy coats so that everyone will not be cold when it's cold outside. In the middle of July, we will host Interfaith Hospitality Network. Because when a family or an individual lost their job, they had nowhere else to live because they couldn't afford rent or be in their homes, and they were homeless for a period of time. And in Interfaith Hospitality Network, it's an organization to help people interview and work their way back into the working world and have places to live again. And we are one of many churches that host for a week families in their time of transition from not having a place to live to hopefully having a place to live again. And we support them through this church and through our offerings and through our space and through our volunteers to make that happen. We will have after church today, you gather on the patio. We'll have Swadit out there sharing vegetables with us. Vegetables that he and his family have grown on the land that they have been provided to grow from the earth and provide us some organic, wonderful, tasty vegetables. A refugee whose family is trying to find their way through the world. And they're not looking at status and wealth. They're just trying to live out the passion and the things they love to do and to live in the world and try to make it. Just because we say we're a follower of Jesus doesn't guarantee anything. That's what Jesus is telling us. Well, I made it into the doors of the church today. I'm in worship. That counts, right? Well, we're getting to the check, check, check mentality. I gave a little offering in the offering plate. I provided some service to a family down the street. What more do you want me to do, Jesus? We get back into that merit system. It's about what I can do rather than who we are. And this turning of our identity around that Jesus is trying to do in this passage is shifting us from the way society thinks. And I would dare say first century world isn't that much different from 21st century world in terms of status and wealth and its importance. It's a timeless message of getting out of a merit system, moving into a relational system where all of us can thrive with our passions and one another. All of us can simply be who we want to be and not put down because of the system around us that inhibits our abilities to function and flourish. It's an upside-down world we live in. It's about time the church turns it back on its feet because it's been living on its head for a long time. Maybe, just maybe, it starts with these words from Jesus at the end of the passage in verse 31. The last shall be first and the first shall be last. It's not about where you find yourself in line. It's making sure that everyone's in the line. And once you're in the line, God's grace is wide enough and deep enough for all of us. Thanks be to God. Amen.